tuition cost would be $13,277.50. So every student who comes here now from an international program, they don't pay us a thing. It's part of changing your culture. It's a good thing. But with this new international high school, we'd actually bring in students that would pay tuition costs, and they would also pay the homestay cost. So if a family in Litchfield decided to take one of these students in, they would receive $9,200 for the student to live there. So right now, this cost of $27,000, it costs a lot of money for an international student to come to the United States, but we don't see those costs. And Ms. Callan and I are working really hard. We're in the second phase of the process, and once we fully get accepted, we'll be able to take students in. Students would like to come here for more than 1 year, and so right now there's a law that they can only come for 1 year, so people are looking to change that so they could come to high school for a couple years and then stay on and go to college in America. So we're excited about this, and so those are two places that we're trying to put smiles on the budget committee's face, and know that we're working hard to keep our costs down.
Those are Laurie's done.
Okay. Oh yeah, those are my costs to go to Pinkerton. So any questions?
Any questions on the information so far?
I have a few around the international high school. I'd like to understand that a little bit better.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that lowers our costs.
Because they'll pay tuition to come here. And so right now, when you
So how many international, I guess I got to go back to the beginning, and I should ask the first question was,
okay,
how many international students do we have here now?
one.
So we're looking at $13,000 worth of revenue if we do this.
He doesn't pay right now.
Okay. I guess my second question is why we want to do that. This is Litchfield.
Yeah, well, the reason that I think the reason we want to do that is we have spaces in classrooms, and we want to make sure that, right now we'll be at a solid like 515 students next year, but we're looking to decrease those numbers, and we don't want to lose any of our outstanding AP programs. We're looking to add like AP statistics next year, but to do that, it comes at a cost. So there's seats actually in those classrooms that we could offer. So it really, it might cost, the state says $13,277 to educate a student in Litchfield. However, we're going to have extra seats, so it really won't be a cost. It'll be a savings, and it would hopefully, give us some really excellent kids. The person that we're dealing with, they really, they vet these kids really strongly. They make sure they're all excellent students. They're coming from good families.
Isn't that the kind of thing that you would want to put before the body of the town? To see if the town really wanted to do that? I'm not quite sure that, from a management point of view.
Why?
Why would you ask the town? Because it's their facilities and...
No, I guess I'm asking, why would you ask the town specifically about these kids? We already tuition in children.
I would ask them because, well, do we want to go we're going into the business of selling our school district. I'm just saying, do we want to do that on a larger scale? As a voter, I'm not sure that I would want to do that, but I would think that that's the kind of question that should be asked of the town before we pursue something like that. I didn't see that one coming. That was kind of like one of those blindside things, so I'm sitting here trying to figure it out.
Well, we've been talking about it at school board meetings, and
I don't follow them very often, Laura.
All right, so.
Well, in terms of tuition, and I'll get to you in a minute, in terms of tuition, we've always tuitioned in students. Not more than maybe a handful. We've also always had foreign exchange students. Again, maybe not more than a handful. So I'm not sure that this is going to be significantly different. It's just as our population declines, there'll be more spaces and going and maybe more formalizing what we already do. So, and Frank, did
I don't
you?
foresee, the whole high school changing, I mean, a couple kids a year, I mean,
I was just kind of curious. It was one of those things, I just didn't see that.
Yeah, well, it was Bow High School who were connected with Bow. They've spent a lot of time on this as one of their ways to address their drop in population. And so I spent a lot of time with John Housemeyers, and I thought it would be something that would be,
I work with 3 people from Bow. They're all upset about their high school doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
They're not very happy at all. But they were more about it because they took the students from Dunbarton.
Oh,
Instead of shrinking the schools
Yeah,
and doing what they
shrinking them.
thought they should do, they said, now we're bringing in all these students.
more
and-
students, yeah.
So that was it's just my 2 cents. I needed to understand that. I'm sorry for
That's okay.
taking you down that pike.
The board did vote to approve the high school moving forward with the application and taking the next step in the certification process. It is a no commitment MOU that we can opt out of at any point in time. At this point in time, this program, my understanding is still is not eligible under federal immigration law. So it's based on an anticipated change in that federal law. No students have yet, therefore, have ever participated in this. So the cost to move forward with the investigative portion was very small. I really don't see it as a huge either cost or
Or revenue.
benefit. As the chair points out, we've always had students. The students that we take currently don't pay tuition. In order to diversify the student population and achieve some other good educational goals, they come in and taking up a seat in a class basically costs nothing if a class goes from 19 kids to 20. This would at least cover the tuition in that way.
Frank, did you have?
I'm sure you're looking at this in regards to increasing the number of students that you obviously bring in from overseas to participate in education here. Where is the break point where you'll have to add staff in order to do this program?
See, we wouldn't be, I don't think the school board would be interested in adding staff to do this program. We're just looking for creative ways to try to maintain programs as, our numbers
But you don't
decrease.
have an understanding as to when you'd have to add staff, is what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I would say that we wouldn't add staff because I don't think we would take in enough kids to have to add staff, We're, right now, like Dr. Cochran said, if we took an international student under this program, they could come for 1 year. That's the agreement. They are trying to get that agreement changed. They're working really hard to have them be able to come to multi-year, so they might be able to come their junior, senior year, and then go to college year. That's what the students, from all over the world really want to do. They want to come to college here. So they think if they come to high school here, they'll have a better chance. And right now, private schools are taking a lot of those kids.
Just one question, Madam Chair. I'm noticing that the lights aren't on and the microphone, at least over here. I'm not sure if we're recording.
Mine's on.
Mine's
Yes, they're on.
This one. Frank must have broken it, I don't know.
Is it on now?
No, it's not on
No, it's
now.
not on.
Which is fine with me. I don't need the microphone.
I know one of them doesn't light up, so that
But
could be
my question really deals with, if you're going to do this on a multi-year basis, then we're going to start to increase above a certain point. And I guess that break point to me is where we start to have to add staff and where it becomes questionable in terms of the economics of this. I also would want to understand, you've got down here tuition of $13,277. Where did that number come from? Is that something set by the school, or is that something set by the program?
By the BA, that's something set by the school, by the state. The state of New Hampshire, they determine what it costs to educate. So different school districts have different numbers, but that's what it costs to.
Well, what's our cost compared to this cost?
No, the 13,000 is your cost.
Is our cost.
Is your cost.
And that's a floating, that's an
So that's
annual
why the
determination.
numbers changed, because But we talked to Philip, he was going with a lower number from a different school, that's the 12,000. But for a Litchfield student, it's the 13,277.
And do you know, or do you have any idea, and I know this may not be something that you have thought about, but does this also create a situation where they have in-state tuition if they were to go on to university?
I'm not really sure if they would be able to get in-state, but that's a really good question. I'm sure that's probably part of the angle.
Okay,
I
thank you.
believe the visa is a student visa as opposed to a resident visa, which would normally mean not eligible for in-student rates. But your point is well taken in terms of, we know whether it's international students or other students, when populations go up, you can go up with a kid in every classroom and there's no cost, and then they go up a little bit further, all of a sudden a lot of classes hit thresholds and it will jump. Likewise, adding students, you may bring some students in with no cost, you may bring another 2 or 3 students in, and you need another teacher for this, and so it's a very uneven piece. I mean, in our case, we're losing roughly 20 to 30 students a year, and sometimes we'll get if that's all aggregated in one place, then it's much easier to manage financially. So there is that unevenness that you're talking about. It's not always as formulaic as one lays out on a spreadsheet.
You know, it's equivalent to, let's say, in the elementary school, you know, you could say the classroom could hold a few more students, and that one more student comes in, and you could say the tuition's 13,000, but you need a teacher. And then by the time the salaries, benefits, and then all the education programs and the other benefits, that's 100,000. So now you're $87,000 in the hole.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not like it's a flow of students coming in that we can't stop.
Right.
It's, you take X amount of students, and your class is at the class, that's where you stop.
Right, but then I guess at some point, the school board would have to know they might have to now let some go, because if some Litchfield students move into town,
Yeah.
where a Litchfield student might put over the threshold, you
Right.
might say, now you have to go back.
I would think the school board would watch those numbers along with the principals and not let it get that close.
Right.
Yeah, this seems to be a program that the school district would be totally in control of. It's not something that would happen behind your back or catch you unawares. You would be able to control that. And just to mention the number, the 13,277, our last meeting, we were talking about what it would cost, what the cost of educating a Litchfield student, and I mentioned that you can get the numbers at the state. They actually track those, and you can see elementary, middle, and high school. So that's where these numbers come from. They're very specific to Litchfield. We submit forms every year, and the state calculates out then what the cost is for an elementary, middle, and a high school student.
They're online, and they also come with a
Yep.
footnote on that Excel file that says that you should not use them for comparison, because every district calculates their stuff just a little bit different, so be careful.
They try to be consistent, but there are some things, such as if you have, I believe,
I'm just saying that's the footnote that's on the state's file.
Yeah, and some of it is, I believe there's a caveat about transportation, and I believe also depending on
It
if you
said-
have bonds. You're absolutely right,
Yeah.
there are variabilities.
Down the bottom, there's a bunch
And
of-
it'll spell out what some of those variabilities are.
If this program were to be implemented and you had a student that was going, if they changed the immigration requirements on a federal level, for a 2-year program, would you be able to, say, stop it after the first year and send that student home as a whole
Yes,
work?
yes, and immediately, if there's any discipline or anything, they pay their own way home, they're gone. So, you know, we've asked all those questions, you know, they have to, parents have to have the money available for them to go home immediately if even if there's a medical issue, like, you know, something that we couldn't control. We did have a situation here where we had an international student that had an eating disorder, and we got very concerned. And, you know, I said to the school nurse, when you say it's time, then, you know, it's time, because we can't, you know, that's a bigger thing than we can handle, and we had to send the person back early.
Any other schools locally doing this program?
Bo.
Just
Bo. Yeah.
I do see some validity in what Ray said about, you know, maybe asking the voters on it. This is somewhat of a change from what we're doing now.
If I can add something, I don't know 3 people who work in Bow, but my sister lives in Bow, and my nephew goes to school at Bow High School. And she's also involved as far as in the school. And they're pretty thrilled with this student exchange program for a lot of things that they bring and can offer the other students.
May I say something? And not really an economic point, but it's more of a cultural point. The one thing that you can see when you come in the doors of Campbell High School is that it's the demographic is pretty similar across the board. There's not a lot of diversity. It's not only race, but on many different levels. And one thing, in my opinion, these children need to see is a sampling that's more reflective of American society, because that's what they're going to encounter when they get out in the world. Go to school, they may get transferred to California or Texas or wherever. South Carolina. And so the fact that they could experience some children, yes, they're handpicked, they're gifted, they're probably well off, but they bring other cultures to the table. And I think that helps our kids grow as well.
You know, I don't disagree with what you just said about diversity, but again, it goes back, in my mind, I'm saying that's a decision that the parents that chose to move to this town and send their kids to this school, maybe the reason was because it's not diverse. I don't know. There could be so many reasons, so.
Oh, I don't think, I'm going to jump in right.
Hold on. I'm just saying it could be, so you don't know. I'm just saying there's many reasons why this should be brought to the people in this town to vote on it and get their opinion. That's all I'm saying. I just said I don't disagree with what Patterson just said, quite honestly.
And again, I want to remind us, this is
That's
already happening, and it
Okay.
has been happening
Okay.
since the day the school opened. And my children, who have long since graduated,
And
went
that's
to
fine.
school with children who were foreign exchange students, and the information and the connection they brought to the classrooms, to the various classrooms, my kids loved it.
And I happen to agree with that.
I loved it.
As
So
a-
I
as a
want us
parent
not
and a
to think
citizen,
that this is
yeah.
a change from what we're doing. This is just a different program and managing it in
Okay.
a different way.
Respectfully, we have had that international interaction, but we've never promoted that or entered
Right.
in an agreement to promote that.
To make it
That's something
official.
new, Cindy, I'm sorry.
And again, I disagree, because what I've seen is we've had a number of students, and we actually do, we have in the past, anyways, contracted to have foreign students come in. I know we've even, parents got information asking if there are households that would be willing to take these students in. So it's not a change.
I'm not going to argue the point. It's,
Just pointing out that, given that the agenda item is a 15-16 high school budget, and this has no impact on the 15-16 high school budget, perhaps
Right.
we should.
It
Back
was
to
just a
this.
good academic discussion.
Well, the other point, which is similar to what the superintendent made, was I'm not sure that even the budget committee has any
no.
review authority or whatever on this, simply because this is something, the program the high school runs, it's a revenue, and it's not a budget item.
You're right, it could be, but down the road, but it's not now. I agree.
So, on that note then, we segue right into Campbell High School budget. Let me just see how this is. So what we've been doing, just starting it on page 1 and kind of going through page by page, and if anybody has any questions or comments or concerns, we've kind of been going through that. One of the things as we start that I want to ask about is, Lori, you mentioned 515 students expecting next year, and I saw it in the budget here. When we got the projections are for next year for 489 students. So I just want to clarify what's the number we're using, because typically what we've used to budget with is our projection numbers and not, I know sometimes people look at the students who are here and the students who are coming up for 8th grade as a gauge. That's not how we typically do it.
No, I agree. I don't have my projections with me. Are they in the front?
We have 124 coming in, and then our sophomore class next year will be 142. And then we have 108 and 141. I think that comes out to maybe 505, so I don't know, 515, 505. Let me just try to add it in my head.
15.
515?
That's a year-old projection.
Okay.
Yeah, what, I have the ones that were from October 1st of 2014, and it has projected for 2015-16, where I just go over 9 through 12, it says 489 students. And this is from, just calculated a month ago. So that's why I wanted to clarify. The 515, and I know typically that's what's been done. You look at who's here now, you look at who's coming up at the 8th grade, you add them together. But we've typically gone with projections, not with who's here and who's,
Yeah, we do monthly updates, and it changes. It always surprises me, it just changes by a few students. I think our most latest update, we're at 507 right now, so, but like next month, it might be 509, or it might be 508, you know, so we get a monthly update on our actual actuaries.
The official October 1 was actually revised to 499, but essentially, it's within a few students of the number that you cited for the
Okay,
projection
so
for next year.
just so you know, when the budget committee makes any adjustments, chances are it's going to be making adjustments based on the 489 projected
And that's
students.
true for the school board. It was discussed that was not the appropriate number. And if you'll note, there was a $5,000 school board overall reduction in that line after conversation about it in general, but also it was pointed out to the school that the number was not the appropriate number.
Okay.
So the school board took it into account in terms of the reduction, but we didn't change the text. We typically try not to change the text
Right.
in the narrative line.
Okay.
So it was pointed out that our practice is to use the actual projected number.
Okay, so I'm glad I pointed that out then, because I would not have known that that's part of the reason you took a $5,000 reduction, so thank you.
Yeah, well, that was part of it, and also because the year before, I lost 3,900, and I went with the number that I originally put in, so it looked like a 5,000, but it was actually $1,000 that I was asking for from the year before. But, and then we just calculated per student. We did use 515 as the number, but we used the, 2706, which was the number that Frank gave us in the budgeting session, multiplied that out, and that's how I came up with that number.
So 2706 was the per cost per student?
2706, yeah.
All right, so we're on page 1, and are there any questions, comments on the information on page 1? All right then, moving on to page 2. So here's another, so they took a reduction on supplies. So was it across the board reduction in supplies throughout the entire school? And then you just applied it here, there, and everywhere? Or so it was specifically for the art?
At the school board level, the first round of cuts were specific cuts to two lines, and that was a total of, I think it's in the report, 29,000 and change.
Okay.
And then a general bottom line reduction of 70,000 was also made, and those were denoted in the column as school administration reductions.
Okay.
So there's specific cuts made by the school board in totaling just under 30,000, and then another 70 if I recall.
70 from me, and then John had reductions in athletics, so it was like 95,000.
All right. Okay, anything on page 3 then? Page 4. Page 5.
Similar commentary about the English supplies, the vocabulary books. The numbers used are significantly off from the actual enrollment. So you see the resulting school board reduction, taking it back to a lower number.
It was the numbers used by actually Bob Manso, so the new CF just carried them over. He
Okay.
just, so he realizes, so we went back and recalculated everything based on real numbers and.
Can I go back to page 3?
Mhm.
Question about these cameras.
Yes.
3, how do we know how many kids are in the class that we think 3 is appropriate? If they're loners, what kind of obligations are, is if you get broken or anything, what would come with that?
Well, they would, we actually, when it was, before it was digital photography, we had other cameras that they would use, and the students would be responsible for them. But now that we've created the digital photography class, not all students do have a digital camera. That's why the teacher was asking for them. But they would sign a contract, and you know, kids have been very responsible. We have really respectful, nice kids, so they take care of everything, you know.
Those were cut.
Yeah, those were cut. Yeah, they were cut.
That's a cut.
Yeah, it's cut. Unless you want to put it back in.
I'm looking at the wrong side of the table.
Okay. No.
All right, so moving, we're up to page 6 then. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9.
I will talk about page 9. I probably should just be quiet, but I know one of the questions that I was prepped that you're going to ask is about textbooks. And so why do we have some textbooks in here and some textbooks in Julie Heon's? So if you look at Lynn Nagy's child development, she's been doing a dual enrollment course, and now she wants to do a running start, which kids can get college credit. So the current text that she has only goes up to through the age of 12, and she needs it. It doesn't go up to it goes up to the age 4, and she needs it to go up to the age 12. So the new text actually goes through all of child development, which is what she needs. So that's why. That she asked for that text. So there are going to be places where we have replacement text, or because we've moved courses around, or because of that 142. So the freshman, that's 142, and we were dealing with 107, but now those 142 are going to be sophomores, that we need to have more text. So I just wanted to explain that.
So then what would be the school board's rationale for taking a cut in that line item? Maybe the cost of the books are small.
Look, it was cut in half, maybe? Yeah, it looks like it was cut in half. So it looks as though instead of purchasing 10 in the current year, they're only planning on purchasing 5.
Share.
Yeah, well, we had to cut 70,000, so I just did across the board. If you look, it was very, very painful, and I tried to be, you know, an equal opportunity cutter, you know, so no one got their feelings hurt.
Page 10. Page 11. Page 12.
On page 11, textbook replacement, we're talking engineering books, architecture books, Photoshop books. Are we not planning to replace any of them then? if they're being
Right,
cut?
you're absolutely right. So that was another hard place. So again, we asked the teacher to come up with a plan that was, you know, what would be a 3-year rollout? What would it look like to update the books so that they're more in line with the applications that they have? You know, when I had to cut 70,000, that was a hard cut too.
So, if we're not, would the curriculum instructor, whoever be the person to talk to about what the plan would be to replace engineering and architecture and those kind of books?
These would be updating their books. So the current workbooks that they have are not aligned to the tools and the applications. So that's why, but they're not in the cycle.
Right.
And so that's why, you know, we attempted to put it in this budget.
These
Because
workbooks or textbooks? I
these
mean-
are, they're workbooks that they use in the class, like they're soft cover, but they can
Oh.
keep them. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we keep them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I was
so,
trying
yeah.
to find out, if it was something
Yeah,
we
they're
gave the student.
soft
or on
covered, so
skating.
they're called workbooks, but they,
Okay, so we're on page 12. Page 13. Page 14.
just, on page 14, I just want to, just so, you know, just for awareness, the additional equipment for band. And our band continues to grow, and we have more and more students. So we're losing 15 band members that are seniors, but we have 30 kids in 8th grade that are going to join our band. And we think our band's going to be up to 100. And so the music teachers have asked for us to think about coming in with, you know, a better storage unit, a place that they can store the instruments instead of just locking them in one room. They're very expensive equipment. And one of the things when I talk to Phil and Jill is they can't do this piecemeal. You know what I mean? They can't just, you know, get part of the lockers in and then part of it. So it's something like if we could, you know, think about having a plan where we could put, you know, $10,000 in and then 10,000, you know, so we could get them what they need by the time that they you know, start to really balloon. That would be great, but we had to cut it off. And we do need to, you know, they do need stands, they do need chairs. There are things that we had to keep because, again, some of the equipment's just aging out, you know, and it's special chair for music that they have to have, and, you know, and they have to have the stands. It's really awesome that we have so many kids in music here, but.
That was one of the things the budget committee did take a tour of Kim's High School, and that was one of the rooms we
Did
went
look
to
at.
and
Oh,
we
good.
looked at and we saw.
Thank you for that.
All right, page 15. Page 16.
What are you getting recalibrated? Are those the balances?
Yes. Our new science department head, she's actually from Los Angeles, California, and she is wonderful, but she has a lot of great ideas, and she has her need list is very big. I you know, try to save as much as I can, you know, in the science lines, because we have some really amazing teachers, and, you know, they have some concerns about, you know, labs, and you know, do we have enough, you know, chemicals and things to do the things that they want to do, you know, so I did make cuts, but they were hard cuts.
Yeah, because we did see what was originally planned to be the greenhouse, and saw that it's full of broken equipment that hasn't had a place to be repaired yet.
Right.
Page 17. Page 18. So, at the top of regular education programs, it says year 2 of a 5-year plan to update the science equipment. So, is what is budgeted year 2, or are we
Year
still on,
two.
we're still on track?
Yeah, we're still on track. So when she first came here last year, when I sat down for the budget meeting, she came in with everything, and I just knew. So I said, if you do a 2 or a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, the budget committee likes that. They like to see that you're long-term planning, that you're building, and we're getting, equipment back.
Page 19. Page 20. So I had a question under theater arts. When the high school puts on a performance, where does the income go for those performances? Does it go into a general fund? Does it go into special?
It goes into their account, and some of the things that they do at their, like this year, they every other year they go on a music field trip. They fly someplace, and so they use those funds to help support things that they do. The music actually, between the boosters and the funds, they've bought a lot of equipment and things to support their programs. And I don't know if you got a chance to see the musical, but it was amazing. I mean, it's for a small school of 500 kids, I am always blown away of the talent in this town between, winning sports, all the championships. Usually most schools, if you have one in your lifetime, we have one a year or 2 a year, and then the plays and the arts and all of our students getting recognized. It's just never ending for us.
Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. Page 24.
Now we're into John's territory, athletics.
Different page numbers.
It's okay, you can follow mine, John.
Page numbers.
One of the things I noticed when I was going through this,
All right.
in the regular education, a lot of our lines are flat or down. And when I looked at the athletics, it seemed as though they were up. There weren't the same kind of cuts that there were in academics. And that concerns me.
Okay,
I believe sports are very important, but if we're gonna make a sacrifice,
sure,
it needs to be across the board.
sure. Is there anything specifically you've got a question about?
I was just looking at 610 supplies. Granted, there was a cut. I think there was a cut, but I was just looking at how it's significantly up. It's almost up $15,000.
If I may speak to that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last year, in 14, we spent $31,500 and change. This year, $24,000 was approved. So we were approved at a significantly less amount of money than we actually spent last year. So, yes, we did ask for more money than we actually spent last year. That is true. A couple of reasons why. We took wrestling off of self-funded, and wrestling's very expensive. So that's a major part of it. Also, we currently have only about $6,000 left in supplies. We're just now getting started in our second of 3 sports seasons. So, you know, I don't know if we're going to make it this year. So, again, we'll find a way. But my point is, in my mind, I'm not looking going from 24,000 to 39,000. I'm looking at 31,000 to 39, and we added a sport that's very expensive. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What, so there's a booster club. What do they offer financially? What do they help supplement?
Our Athletic Boosters Club, really, they do special projects more than anything else. They don't subsidize specific sports. If someone had a specific need, they might could help a little bit. They do scholarships. They do the varsity club does the sweatshirts. They also they've done some award boards, like the track award board. They've sponsored that. They give scholarships at the end of the year to students who are deserving. They give $400 or $500 scholarships. So that's kind of where their work is.
They work so tirelessly, and for the homecoming, I mean, they came in and decorated for like 8 hours to make sure it looked perfect, and they bought all the pumpkins and the red and black, and they do a lot. And they also will help a needy student if we have somebody that can't afford something. They're always there.
Mm-hmm.
This year we applied for and were awarded the state wrestling tournament, which it could be a pretty substantial, windfall for our wrestling program, which is just now gone from being self-funded to, I don't know if anything's really fully funded in athletics, but partially funded. That said, we have a need for a new mat, extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. They would like to make enough money through this state wrestling tournament to earmark those funds for the purchase of a new mat. They're not looking for, a handout, somebody give them everything. They understand it's expensive, and they're grateful for the fact that they're partially funded now. So.
And I seem to recall that the mat was needed when the program started itself several years ago, so I'm surprised they're still looking for that mat.
It's, we do the best we can with what we have.
What is the actual cost of wrestling that went from self-funded to in the budget?
Well, I guess you'd have to go down through different lines,
Yeah,
look at
it's a little bit
supplies,
everywhere.
supplies, transportation, coaches, stipend. I think the overall cost
Officials.
last year, officials, I would say right at $10,000 they paid us back last year, wasn't it, Frank?
Around 12,000. I think it was around 12. a little
All
bit
right,
less.
so-
Yeah, it's around 12, 10 to 12,000 dollars.
It's pretty good.
We absorbed that into the budget.
We have a high number of students that do wrestle, and we have a lot of, as a matter of fact, I heard Frank, because we had a lot of the little young ones come here and wrestle, and they like to run around the halls, but, we have, it is,
Right.
the Litchfield community has a lot of kids who are involved in wrestling.
You get in there right now, you're going to see a bunch of little bitty shaking bakers. I mean, they're anywhere from 5 years old up to about 10 or 12 years old, and I mean, that's how you grow a program. Mm-hmm. If you go over there to Timberlane and some of the schools that are not only the best in the state, but some of the best in the country. I mean, they compete for the New Englands every year. They start those kids out wrestling when they're that high. That's how you get it done.
Yeah, when we took our tour, they were practicing in the cafeteria.
They were,
They always do.
and to their, I'll also like to chime in just quickly on that. They take those mats. Those mats take a beating, because we're here quite a bit at night, and we see them hauling the mats out of the gym, bringing the Congo line, bringing them right into the cafeteria and setting them up, taping them, and then at night when they're done with their practice at 8:30, they're going to do the opposite and bring them back. And we go into that cafeteria the next morning, it's as if they weren't even in there. So they really have not the cost of $10,000 to $12,000 is a true cost, and they really bear their responsibility there as well. So they've been a good addition to the CHS.
I want to try to understand, it's 2014 actual expenditures, 31,519. You said the 15 approved budget was 24,663. Whose budget was that? I mean, where did that number come from? The 15 approved budget of 24,663.
If I can, that budget was cut last year.
By who?
Well, I don't recall who, I don't have those notes in front of me.
School board.
But I can tell you it was either, I believe it was the school board, or it could have been administration, but the original request was substantially cut.
When they received the default budget, they went through the exercise of changing the budget, and we ended up getting a copy of that, so that would have been where that number came from.
Thank you, that's the question. So in other words, when it left this committee, before it went to the voters, it was closer to the 31,000. Then the voters rejected the budget, and then when the numbers were redone, the school board took from that. Is that the way?
I think
I can't
that's
remember if the
reasonable.
school
I think
board,
that's
I-
how it
No,
happened.
I don't know if the school board, if in fact it played out that way, 'cause I don't know, that was last year's question, how it played out. I can't tell you specifically how we did
You
that.
see, I mean, obviously, this one's always discussed every year, and look, I'm a supporter of sports, and I know the wrestling program is doing a great job, as is football and baseball and softball, and they're all important, and some kids gravitate to certain sports, and some play multi-sports, and I think it's great. But this is the fear we have, because what happens if it goes to the voters and they say no, and then it's gonna get cut again? And, because what gets cut first is, making a commentary, it's usually maintenance and sports. So how do we go to the voters and tell them if the budget overall is higher? Because you made a point, you said equal cuts, right? There's cuts coming in academic. But, at this, you could just throw up your hands and say, because nobody wants to cut wrestling, right? I mean, it's important.
Well, you could show that you're supportive of the budget.
Well, and I mean,
Sam.
it's, we could all be in support of the budget, and I'm just thinking ahead and thinking out loud right now, that's it. I mean, the people in this room need to be convinced, of course, but we're not the ultimate say, so I'm just speculating now, that's
But
it.
also, it is a bottom line budget, so
Right.
if whatever the voters appropriate as bottom line, it's then our responsibility as administrators to
Absolutely.
go and divvy up, if you will, and that's, I believe, what was the case here with the
Right.
supplies. The supplies took a substantial reduction because of that.
Speaking of football,
Yes.
do we own the, no, that's not what I was gonna say. I wanna know that if we had any plans on paying for the porta potties to sit out in the field all winter long, because they're still out there, it's been a while since we had a football game. We're
Yes.
renting those, I'm assuming, right?
I don't know anybody that purchases porta potties, but yeah.
Well,
Yes, sir. They should have been picked up. We actually contracted that for 1 month. So if they don't pick them up, that's what we paid for.
Whether we're paying for that or not. I couldn't find it in the budget.
I told Matt to bring in some extra ones for homecoming because we had a whole bunch of folks out there. And so we didn't want them really in the school for a lot of reasons at that time. So we put more porta potties out there. And but it was really for a one-time event, so you got to rent it for a month. So but I don't know why they hadn't picked up. It's a good call. I'll
When was
find out.
homecoming?
Yes, sir.
When was homecoming?
Last
October.
game of the regular season.
Pardon?
It was the end of October.
Okay.
They're still down at the new fields too right now.
Pardon?
They're still down at the new fields also.
Are they?
So if
I just got
we're not
curious 'cause
paying
I
for
was
them,
leaving-
they're just sitting there.
Well, I think it's one of those
I
things,
see
yeah,
them
they
sitting
got,
there.
you pay
You
them X
must not
amount.
need them or something.
Yeah, they haven't come to you
Not a
yet.
lot of use for
Probably
porta
stink.
potties.
I think.
All right, anything else on page 24, 25? 26 is also part of 27. And 28.
I'm sorry, the 650 on page 27, the software, is that not really an increase, or was something moved?
That line where it says impact testing software, that was moved from the athletic trainer services. And the company that we contract with athletic training, they require that our athletes be impact tested, which is not a state requirement. it's a precursor to concussion, like you get a pre-test, and so you got a baseline on a youngster if they have a potential concussion. So I reckon I had it in the wrong line.
Right, that is not a new, if your question is it new, it's not. It's in this year's, and basically, it should have been classified as software, because even though it is software, we just reallocated it down to the 651.
Okay, so then there really is somewhat of an increase then, because athletic trainer services decreased by 1,000, but the software went up to 4,200, so there's really an in plus 5,200. No, 42.
Right, it's went from one line to a different one. The athletic trainer service contract's still in place at $25,000.
Yeah, I see that. That was the 1,000 that was moved from athletic trainer.
Yes, sir.
And then the other software was moved from line 610, okay.
Yeah, there's two lines impacting this that we're.
Yeah.
Thank you, now I see it.
The neuropsychologist, that doctor's reading line, that stayed in the same line, $500.
Anything else on page 27? 28? $29. Actually, back to 28. How are preseason trips for the sports teams, transportation, how is that considered self-funded? How do we get reimbursed for a preseason lacrosse game?
We give lacrosse a bill. It says what it cost us to give you what you needed, from your coach's stipend to the bus transportation to paying for the officials. So at the end of the year, they say, we tell lacrosse, and they got to give us some money, right?
Okay, so.
Every lacrosse in particular, Coach Patterson sits with them, and we reach a MOU each and every year.
Okay, I was in error to choose lacrosse. So soccer, that's one of our sports we've had forever. A preseason soccer game. How, if it's already a sport that we run, how is one preseason game considered to be self-funded? I erred in choosing lacrosse.
That's fair.
It's funded
Fair.
through the operating
A few years, I guess the year before I got here, they took away some of the preseason expenditures for the sports, and that's why they're still going to go. So if they're going to go, they got to figure out, they're going to take it out of their club money or whatever,
So the team either figures out how to pay for it or,
or they don't go.
okay.
And
I was just curious why some of the traditional
Yes,
sports
ma'am.
were under there as well.
Most of the time you have several preseason scrimmages, and maybe we can pay for one, but we can't pay for two,
Okay.
for example.
In some ways, it's not unlike paying a fee to participate. In this case, they have to fundraise or contribute to cover at least part of that. So in many ways, it's I think a very good thing to have them have to fundraise or participate to cover the sport. And it is simply a preseason game, but at least it's I think a nice effort on the part of athletics to recoup some of the money, and at the same time get them to recognize that this is something that has some value to it.
We try to get all our scrimmages at home.
Yeah, exactly. All right, page 29. $330 professional services. It's tutoring for students who have medical absences. Why is that up? How do we know we're going to need more next year?
Tutoring students for the,
It was the 2013, the actual was 24,000. Then 2014, it was 661. So it's quite variable. So I was just curious
Yeah,
where the
we-
8,000 came from and why we think it's the right number.
well, we have 60 students with 504 plans right now, so that number has increased. We also have 3 hearing impaired students that require 135 minutes. And we also know that we've had a number of students who've had medical absences because of concussions or other things. So I think that Jody was just concerned with the number this year, so she wanted to make sure that she had enough money, because it's unforeseen, really.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering how we came up with that number, because it looks like it's widely variable.
It is widely variable. Let me just see.
But just so I understand, is 4,400 of that different? Is that just for what we know, 3 hearing impaired students?
Right. Let me just see what sheet I have for notes, too. Guidance. So she has mileage for the teacher of the deaf in there. She has 3 hearing impaired. She has tutoring for students with 60 with 504s. And then she said if we had to pay an independent study teacher. So right now, if our kids take a CET class, one of the big problems that we have with if they're going to like Nashua North or South is they're on the bus as long as they are in the class, because we send one bus over, so they drop off at, say South, then they go to North and drop off. Then when they go to pick them up, they go to South, then they go to North, and then they come back. And so with our tight schedule, being a small school, some of our kids might not get, for example, history that they have to graduate. So we have to, do an independent study, and we have to contract those services. So that's another reason why we're looking at Pinkerton, because it'd be less bus time, and our kids would be able to take all of their classes here, which we'd like them to do.
All right, so I just saw that
Yep.
there's some students.
So
who
good
are
job that she
taking
said
more
that.
subjects.
So that's why.
That's where that comes from. Okay, moving on to page 30. And page 31. Page 32. Page 33. Page 34. Page 35. And it's funny, I noticed here, line 272, that we were having a conversation about the other night. Here's a case where that line actually reduced.
Yeah, I reduced it because I felt so guilty that I had to cut everyone, so I was, again, the equal opportunity cutter, so everybody gets it, even the principal.
Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. And 39. And the last page, 40. All right. Anything else that you want to ask Campbell High about? Okay.
Okay, back on page 28. Okay. Under the supplies, 2014 actuals was 0, 2015 approved, 54, and then this year you're requesting 10,700.
That is under self-funded programs. So my
It's at the
assumption
bottom,
is
Right,
that's gonna have some offsetting revenue.
right.
Okay.
So
Good catch.
I guess if you wanna spend it, you can spend it as long as you're reimbursing it.
That is a dollar reimbursement, so it's totally self-funded. Those accounts are not subsidized at all by the general fund. It's a dollar-for-dollar reimbursement. So if they want, as the chair said, if they want to spend it, they have to have another account.
And under item 810, all the dues and fees, I mean, just across the board, some, over $47,000 due. Any of these overlap? I mean, between the schools and
Again, it's self-funded, it's.
all the
totally-
810s, though, I mean, there's a,
Well, this one specifically is for lacrosse, which again is self-funded.
Yeah, so.
It comes out of their budget and they give us the revenue, they cut the check and we make the payments on their behalf.
I think,
You're welcome.
I've got it itemized, last year's wrestling, I'll make you a copy of that too. Anybody else want one of those? What the expenditures for wrestling were that was self-funded last year that we're gonna absorb this year?
All right, so that concludes Campbell High School.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for
Nice
coming.
to see you. Nice seeing you. I'll see you next year, hopefully. I'll see you before next year. Come on in, visit us anytime. Thank you for your kindness.
Thank you.
Good night. Night. Thank you.
All right, we come to our next section, which is voting on presentations we had on Tuesday.
We're gonna vote the budgets.
We will look initially at school board, which is 2 pages, and ask for any changes. Anything? All right. I don't hear anything. We will move on to SAU. So there's district administration, business and finance, and those two. Anybody?
Look, we were gonna go through, the travel account, but that was where our conversations were last week, centered around.
I know that both Bill and
Right.
Andrew made comments about the 72 conferences and workshops, and I think it was also travel.
Right, I mean, it wasn't each,
580.
and, I mean, they have to drill down in the detail, and obviously I wanna, I'm sure they'll have some input when they do come back.
Mhm.
I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about their thoughts. But we're not closing any of these accounts now anyway.
No. So I have a couple places. I want to first look at postage, 534. And we don't have Andrew here with his history that goes beyond the 2 years that we're presented with, but it looks as though our history is slightly lower than what is budgeted. So I want to make a motion to reduce line 534 by $750.
I'm sorry, Cindy, what page is that?
It's page 1.
Okay.
Under district administration, and it's line 54, excuse me, line 534.
You want to reduce it by, I'm sorry, how much?
$750.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Let me just get an actual, so that brings it down to, because I know we like to deal with what the actual new number is. That brings it down to $2,464 is the new postage number. Is there any discussion?
Are you just going with the average?
I'm just bringing it closer to what the average has been, yeah.
Why would you use an average?
Postage keeps going up.
The postage planning to go up next year?
Seems to go up all the time, on a regular basis.
But everybody's sending out less material. That
Yeah, but I mean, if you have something that grows, let's say 4% a year, and I'm just making up numbers now, and you go over 10 years, so you take an average, you're using the fifth, roughly the fifth year, years, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you're out of budget. Using an average doesn't make sense to adjust a budget.
I'm only using the last 2 years.
Well, that makes even less sense. Taking an average of two numbers is, your spread, your likely probable true number is probably way discrepantant from an average of two numbers.
What is she, $100 off, $150? I mean,
But
you're
even
talking,
still, if you do a 4% increase on 22.
I think you have room.
2481, so we're $20 less than the 4% increase.
I mean, the commentary we had the other night when Andrew was talking about, when you look at the reduction in the principal and interest payments for Campbell High School, and you add that to the increase, it's pretty significant, and I realize that difficult cuts have already been made, but I think that in order for the community to pass a budget, some more additional cuts are going to be made, or as the example Chris gave of, the schools ended up getting a default budget, they had to make some cuts in their sports. So they got, even though they asked for more and the budget committee approved more and supported more, the community didn't, so they ended up with less. So I'm just looking at some of the places, and there are going to be a lot harder cuts than this.
I'm with Cindy on this one. I think the school board did a great job, I think. It's Rothhouse, I mean, you could see it was tough on some of the cuts. You could always make an argument there's always room for more, and none of this is easy. So we might have to dig deep into some of the smaller stuff and try and justify it and give our best case and see if it passes both this room, deliberative, and the voting session.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of reducing line 534 by $750 for a new total of $2,464, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Aye.
Any abstentions? How many are we tonight? 2, 4, 6, 7.
Six.
So it is 5-2. It passes. And on page 2, line 890, miscellaneous, I understand the rationale behind the school board's increase, but I think some of the information, for example, what Ray People sent around, certainly recognition is part of what, drives
Can I
it.
just, I'm sorry.
Actually, what I should do is let me make the motion, and then we'll have the discussion, so then you can just, so my motion is to reduce line 890 by $2,175.
Okay.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Brian, did you want to jump in?
I did. The information, if I'm not mistaken, was about 8 years old that you sent?
It was on the NEA website.
Right, but I believe it was 8 years old, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it?
No, I don't believe so, but I can't get online, so I can't confirm that for you.
I may
It
be
looked like
wrong.
current data, I just looked for teacher retention,
Okay.
and that's what it came up, and basically it said 17% of the teachers in the first 0 to 5 years category, they leave the profession, so keeping them isn't because,
Right.
isn't why they're leaving because they don't like teaching, or they don't understand it, or they don't get mentored well. There was a whole list of reasons they gave in there.
But recognizing good work is also in there, as far as
Yeah.
retention.
I think recognizing good work is definitely important. I think you don't necessarily have to do it with a monetary award. I think there's
No,
lots of
and-
ways to validate what the teachers do and support what the teachers do, decision-making, making them feel that they are involved in the decisions and buy into those decisions and are listened to and appreciated. I think that plays a lot into it. I think a couple $100, that they can spend at their classroom is certainly a nice thing. That may be something more appropriate for a PTO. I know at the younger grades, that's a lot of times what the PTO does. So I appreciate what you were trying to do. Again, I'm looking at the hard cuts and.
But again, those funds weren't meant for monetary reward.
Okay.
I meant for plaques and recognition, right?
Right.
How can anybody in this room actually argue that, that recognizing quality teachers and good deeds is a bad thing? Nobody in this room could argue that, so that's not the point. What the point is, and I think Cindy made with her proposed reduction, was that it's can we afford it? Not that whether it's necessary or not, because that's not the issue. So, correct, in these times, we have to dig deep, and I think if we sacrifice possibly that, and it might give a slighter chance of having the entire budget pass as opposed to fail, and then we don't get that and other things, I think is the way we should go. But we're not arguing about whether recognizing teachers is a good thing, because that clearly is.
I think the teachers should notice that the town of Litchfield is generous. I mean, they have an excellent benefits package, and
No, but as I remember the discussion, it centered around teacher retention and why teachers leave. And am I wrong, Dr. Cochran? That was what you had said, was this would help.
Yep. It's essentially a way of giving people, what the chair mentioned in terms of giving them some resources, some control over at least a small amount of money that they're going to be able to use to their advantage in the classrooms. There's the best study, the NEA study, by the way, is the data like that has been around for a while, and it's basically looking at why is it that we have a lot of turnover with younger teachers. A lot of it has to do with advocating for mentoring programs and things like that. One of the best studies on teacher retention basically said a couple of things, that the recognition from administration, being told that you're an effective teacher, that you make a difference, is a no-cost, highly effective retention strategy. And the other is small amounts of money to allow somebody to do something that they want to do in their classroom. I want a $500 projector so that I can take student work and put it there. I mean, so it's one of the items, for example, that was cut from this year's budget at the high school. So here it is. I can use this. I can demonstrate student work, and then immediately go off in a different direction with it, because we're looking at something the student created right then and there. So the ability to be able to have something supplied in recognition that they can then use to enhance their practice and student learning even more is a very powerful motivator, because you're actually reinforcing the quality of the work and the importance of the work that they do. And quite honestly, most teachers who are effective teachers got into this business to make a difference. And so anything that reinforces that making of a difference as an important thing worth recognizing is what tends to drive retention. And in this case, it's not retention in the field as much as it is retention in Litchfield. Our salaries package is less than state average, as I mentioned the other night, and less than the regional area. Our benefits package is average to slightly less than. So when you're talking about retention, the private-public comparison is one that's useful in some contexts. But if you're talking about retention of working here versus other school districts, we're not so competitive. You know, the contract will help. We're not back where we were 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And, you know, highly effective teachers are the lifeblood of the school. So that's why, you know, I think the board felt it was an important token. And that's the rationale. It's one that I support.
And just for point of clarification, the proposed cut to that line is still going to keep in that line as much money, $1,825 that was there this year and last year, and it would still be $400 more than was spent in 2014.
Understand.
Just so people watching know what what we're talking about.
I think we need to be
Yeah.
made, keep taxes affordable.
It's
And
$2 million higher than.
And if we're gonna fight over something like this, it's gonna get really interesting in the next couple of weeks. So, I mean, I don't want the teachers to think we don't appreciate them, but I think people have the right to be able to afford their houses too. So, to me, this is,
I personally, my point of view is, I want to keep every dollar in either a direct educational program or the building, you know, to maintain our facilities.
We're talking
Those are the
about-
two things that are core.
we're not replacing engineering workbooks. I mean, to me, that's engineering. It's like, where we're going.
Doesn't support the STEM initiative, right?
Exactly, and not to me, it's.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, the motion is to reduce line 890 miscellaneous by $2,175, which leaves a total in that line of $1,825. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Okay, so the motion passes 6-1. All right, moving on then to page 1, district-wide business and finance.
I just have one question on 446. I don't remember covering this, but what is Blackboard Rapid Communication Service?
Sorry, what was it again? Right.
446, Blackboard Rapid Communication Service?
Oh, that's the software package that we use to communicate with parents electronically. It does voice and mail. So it's the school cancellations, outreach, high school guidance, that sort of thing.
It's a reverse call-out.
I don't remember us talking about it in.
They were bought out, it used to be Alert Now, so Alert Now was bought out by Blackboard, so it's now Blackboard Connect. If you've seen it in prior years.
Just
What?
to notify people that school's canceled, or an alert?
No. It would be emergencies.
Oh,
It's a communication medium.
okay.
Anything on page 1? All right, I will make a motion to reduce line 272, conference and workshop reimbursement, and reduce that by $1,200 to leave it at a total of $1,200. Is there a second?
Second.
I am an advocate of workshops and learning. And I understand this committee has not done that in the past, and I think it's a great direction to head. But I'm looking at perhaps ramping up. I'm going to suspect that all 12 members aren't going to be able to, as much as they might like to, aren't going to be able to make these conferences, and maybe there are cheaper alternatives to the conferences. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of line 272, reduction of $1,200 to leave $1,200 in that line, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes any abstentions, I'm sorry. Motion passes 6-1-0. Feel free to jump in, guys.
Item 610,
Okay.
the supplies. What's JMLC district-wide safety committee, which nothing was spent in 2014, and now $1,000 for this year?
Joint Management Loss Committee?
There we go. Okay. All right.
How long has that committee been in existence, out of curiosity?
It's an RSA, it's required as a public entity that we fall under the Primex. We're required to have a Joint Management Loss Committee by the RSA.
So we've had one for,
We've had one for a long
It's
time.
actually required, it's required in
well,
Most
industry as well.
Right, in industry as well. Yeah.
so my next question would be, if we've had it for, like, ever, have we ever spent anything?
They have spent, but we found other ways to fund
Okay.
the spending.
Okay,
They've
can
never
you,
had money to spend. And now that I'm part of it, we needed to have a budget so that we have money in our supplies. We have, we've kind of charged other areas of the budget for what rightfully should be charged.
I can
against
either
the
cut
chamber.
1,000 there, or back on page 1 for district administration and 610 supplies, which is 4509, and last year was 2301 spent. Give you the choice.
No, you have a choice.
Yeah,
We'll- If we need to.
I will
we'll find
leave
the
it.
money.
I will take it out of SAU supplies. I'm gonna make a motion for line 610 in district administration to cut it $1,000.
Already, so is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion. One of the things that you mentioned when you were presenting to us last week about the reason for the joint loss was if they identified a need for more walk-off mats or something like that, that you could get them. But I mean, I personally feel that that's in other areas of the budget for those kind of supplies. So I would think that the joint loss,
These are consumable supplies. That line is not, that wouldn't be for material.
and what are the consumables? Because when you said that last week, you.
Well, that was one thing that I said. I said a number of things. Notebooks, I don't
That
know.
was Tuesday, actually.
I know.
I mean,
it
things,
does, doesn't it?
we, supplies, I mean, again, this is a committee that comes from all over the district, so if they need supplies, this should be funding those supplies for need for clearing binders.
We have to print the safety book.
We print a safety book that is gonna come out of the.
So prior to this year, was it coming out of, let's say,
It
the
was just
district?
being charged against other areas of the budget.
Like the SAU supplies district administration where we're
Yep.
talking about now?
So, yeah, let's bring it back to this proposed reduction is actually under SAU supplies.
Correct.
So the history of that is, the 2 years we have here is 3654 and 2301. So a reduction still brings that to comfortably what has been spent in the two actual expenditures that we have,
3509.
3509.
What's been the history in terms of the Joint Management Loss Committee, in terms of their functioning over the past couple of years that they're using to track the data? Has there been significant work by that committee at those periods of time, or is this something that you're now taking over in spring?
Well, I've only had a year and a half, and I'm gonna look at Michelle as well, but this committee is extremely active. We've had almost 100% participation in this committee. Again, this committee looks at areas of the district that are susceptible to loss. They look at our joint loss reports coming out of Primex, so, to answer.
Safety walkthroughs.
We do safety
Building
walkthroughs every year.
walkthroughs.
And that was part of the training that the members had requested, because a lot of times they're doing safety walkthroughs in the building, especially in the mechanical areas that they're not that familiar with. We got, for instance, the music teacher from LMS doing a safety walkthrough at Campbell High School and looking for deficiencies. So, again, I think the committee over the years has been extremely active and
Well, we
continues
also
to be.
set up, was before you came, we set up training with FEMA
Right.
for incident command.
Right.
Everybody that was involved in the school safety committees as well as the district JLMC had to be trained on an 8-hour training session online. And we set up, we instructed the school safety committees to have an incident command team at every school, as well as at the district level.
So I want to understand, I mean, a lot of it's walkthroughs, training, FEMA. So basically, other than maybe just notebooks, pens, pencils, it doesn't seem like there's much other expenses coming out of there, or am I missing something? Like the FEMA workshop, that's probably, that's on the federal tax dollar.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Well, we also,
You're asking a question I can't answer. I don't know if
Excuse
the
me.
FEMA training was on the tax dollar.
we also incentivize, we have a monthly safety contest to get people more interested in spotting safety violations or things that are, you know, a concern. And if they, you know, we want them to look in the safety, but we want them to follow that safety manual. We also have vendors, new vendors, all of our vendors have signed it, but if we have any new vendors or new hires, they have to sign it, they have to abide by it. So in order to familiarize new hires with it, we ask different questions every year and incentivize. A lot of people through the Saucy News, and a lot of people have, you know, it's a very small gift card, but it draws people in to look for those answers and look for those violations, and we've had good success with the program.
Speaking from the town's perspective, we do the Joint Management Loss Committee as well. But I can tell you that the FEMA training you're talking about, Chris, is probably the free one that's online. There's several modules to it that usually is for incident command, organization, stuff like that. That's free. You can just take it, and it's a computerized course. You do it at your own pace type thing. But that said, there is a need for the school to be able to do those self-audits, which is really the key and the whole focus of the program. And if they can't do it, they can't document it, they can't make those things that are identified in the audits fixed and that type of stuff, then the whole program falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a need for a system, clearly they're very active and they do a lot. I'm just trying to see where the money's being spent, is how I'm just trying to determine. But we're talking right now, I mean, I could see where the JMLC, but the reason why I'm talking about that, Cindy, is because it seems like, I guess prior to this year, the money may have came out of the 610. So I'm just trying to reconcile the two accounts. So if I assume that there's $1,000 in the other one, which we're not talking about now, the supplies for the JMLC, but also, so if the money was coming out of the 610 line SAU supplies, only 2,300 was spent in there.
That's an assumption. I don't believe I said
Oh,
that. It
no,
was coming
we're
from
assuming.
different areas. It was probably coming from wherever we had some money
Okay.
underspent.
I think it still leaves them enough in there to
I mean,
cover everything.
I'm comfortable with that, personally, I'm comfortable with the 1,000 in that line, but then I'm
Probably cut a
also,
little more, but without knowing exactly what they had
I also have
before.
another concern about the other line, the JMLC supply line, but.
Right.
All right, so we're talking about SAU supplies, 610. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, 610 supplies, reducing it by $1,000, leaving $3,509, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and any abstain? Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving back then to page 1 of the Business Finance Office. Page 2. Page 3.
All right, excuse me. Back on item 446, the other day, we circled something with the projected 4%, and then there was $10,000 for SunGuard. We had discussed something about that, but apparently I didn't fill in the notes in between, so hopefully somebody else.
That was their, $10,000 was the one-time cost upgrade, so that's consulting.
And the projected 4% increase, $2,075. Is that solid? Did they have?
That is solid. Well, that's what they're giving us as a figure right now.
Will our licensing go up?
Nothing is solid because they wait until they're done with, when they're ready to give us a price.
Right, will the
That's a
licensing?
$9,128 increase across that whole.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that basically is the one-time cost to upgrade the e-finance accounting system.
And my question.
That's the time card and everything, correct? Wasn't that where that
No,
was?
this is the
Yes.
time card was down further.
This is to bring it to a higher level version, incorporating a lot of the enhancements that are required. Again, that's a choice that the district can make not to do that, but again, we will not the product support when you do not bring up to the higher version can be diminished.
So will we be seeing an increase in our licensing fee by upgrading our system?
Nope.
All right. So this is a one-time fee. Next year, it would be back to the 26 or 36 or whatever it is, $10,000.
That $10,000 won't be there next year, is what?
One-time cost.
That's consulting, right? I assume that was,
It's a one-time cost to upgrade to the
Purchasing
next version.
module, possibly.
To clarify, if there's a new version next year, there'll be
Yeah.
another cost, right?
If you so choose. This is the first version that they've come out with 7 years, I believe, 6 years.
So should we wait till the second year when they work out all their kinks?
they're a big company, but they're
We
certainly
have done the
not brand
analysis.
name.
We feel that the version that they're bringing out is worthy of us making the $10,000 investment. I don't know what else.
This is the first year
to say.
for that system itself?
It's not out yet.
Could be
No,
fantastic.
this is not the first.
Is it not a good idea to buy the first systems? I mean,
Somebody's got to drive it.
Well, could we offer to beta test it? No, for free?
I guess, and I'm sure that's really not up to us, is if you feel that it's a significant improvement, and
This isn't just our decision, by the way. That, part of that snug that you saw in the budget, that's the user support group. We attended the conference in Baltimore last month, and that was part of the presentation, is for us to take a look at the enhancements that are upcoming. And part of our participation at that workshop was to make that determination as to whether or not we wanted to leave it in the budget. And after attending, we felt that the enhancements were sufficient enough for us to substantiate the $10,000 going to the next version.
Is line 734, the time clock plus electronic time cards, tied in with that? The $7,000?
No,
That's different, okay.
totally different. So if the time clock plus wasn't there, you would still see that cost there.
So we have a paperless module for $750, and then it's like an indent for the one-time cost to upgrade the e-finance. So is that upgrading the paperless module? Do we need the paperless module? The way it's lined up here, it's like you're
Yes.
buying the module and then you're buying like an enhanced version of that module.
you have to have, that 750 is paying for the input for those time clocks, the ability to input.
So that $750 remains, the $10,000 is a one-time.
so it's a $17,000 investment, because you need the two go
Well,
together.
The question then too is, what
Is
is
that
the Cognos reporting customization consulting for $5,000?
That's entirely different. That, each year, we have a consultant, because no one is in-house, with the ability to write Cognos reports. If you're familiar with Cognos, it's similar to Crystal, probably just as complex. So to the extent that we have changing requirements to change our reporting, reports we give internally as well as externally. We do have a consultant, in fact, he's one of the few in the country, he's located in Denver, Colorado, that truly, you can call up and request, and we do that. We use them quite often. We use them for training as well, when we try to do some train-the-trainer as well in-house.
Did you just say one of the few in the country?
That consults to education, correct.
Oh,
That understands
to education, I was gonna say, because Cognos is IBM.
No.
That's much bigger than a bread box.
I stand corrected, then if you didn't understand, let me repeat. He's one of the few that knows e-finance and consults to education, that has the ability to write by point of clarification, yeah.
Any further discussion? Flipping the page then, HR staff services, page 1 and 2.
May I, through the chair? Just a point of clarification, we really didn't get to it the other evening, but conference and workshops is up as, for HR, as well as travel. Our new HR director that came on board July 1st has a keen sense and has great abilities in the database, which is our e-finance. We have payroll and personnel management is on our e-finance. So she, her predecessors have kind of shied away from that, I think because of their lack of understanding of the database area. So she has since, coming on board, she's also joined the SNUG network. And she did also attend so she's really, that's part of that enhancement in the expense, the increase in the expenses, because she's now looking to get more involved in that area as well.
Will that, once she gets to that level, will that save us money in other lines? Because are we?
What level? Skill level, you mean?
Skill level, would that take away some consulting or?
Not necessarily, because it's more of a knowledge level. E-finance is a difficult software to understand. I've been working with it now for a year and a half, and it's still, I don't fully comprehend. So I think the snug support is more knowledge-based to really get to where you need to do to where it's a very complex software program. It has a lot of components to it.
Is Snug I tried to find them online last week.
Snug National
It's-
User Group.
It's, yeah, SunGard National User Group. Is that sponsored by SunGard, or is that an independent user group, or, try to understand that.
They're independent.
SunGard's a little strange.
Yeah, they're quasi, I mean, they're well connected with SunGard, but they're separate and distinct, yeah.
The current HR director, one of the.
It's not support from SunGard,
No, no.
so,
Sorry.
we do have direct support from SunGard.
We
So
do.
This is in addition to.
Yeah, no, this is more of a user group.
As you say, the current HR director, one of her unique skills is that she has significant background in both payroll and benefits side, and she's one of 3 key people in the Nashua multiple-year rollout of Lawson as their ERP, and she helped write a lot of the programs that kept the accounting stuff in-house instead of having to do exports, process, and go back. So she has a very good mind for it, very good skill set. So we're trying to tap into that resource, and we think she's going to be a top-notch HR director. So this is an area where it takes a certain capacity to do it well, and we know we have the right fit for it. So it just makes sense to invest in the personnel in this case.
Anything else?
734, what kind of equipment are we buying in HR? New equipment, just new equipment. I'm just curious as to what equipment we're going to buy. 734.
$350?
Just out of curiosity. Printer?
I don't know what she was looking for there when she put that amount in.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's a placeholder or if there's actually something in mind.
If it were a placeholder, typically they're instructed to placehold it with $1.
Okay.
So I think she just didn't provide, this was, again, her first time going through this. I honestly, I could make a few things up for you, but I don't know if that's what she was.
It'd be easy enough to get an answer for.
I could get an answer for you on what she's looking for there.
I'm just curious, that's all.
My sense it has something to do with her office, because she's been redesigning a little bit, so she
Oh.
might be looking for something for her office, and I certainly can bring clarification via an email when I see her tomorrow
That
morning.
would be lovely. Sure.
I could do that for you.
All right. Moving on then to curriculum.
And Dr. Heon still is not back, and we still have to sort out the textbook piece, but we may be able to answer questions in some other areas if you have it.
Actually, I was going to ask, Madam Chair, if we could hold off on the curriculum, even as far as cuts, where Dr. Heon is the expert in this category, that once she's present, then if there are any cuts, she could be here as far as to at least explain to you why they're there.
And further to that point, Dr. Heon, when she does come back, I've already asked her to sit with me, and maybe we're going to try to put together kind of a separate sheet for you, so you can see exactly how it all, because it's very difficult to go back and forth and look in between. So we're going to try to condense that a little bit for you, so you can see exactly how the costs for the new text did in fact roll up, and then the 640 and the 641 that are located in the local areas, that there's some definition to that. So we need to do some work on that, we understand that.
And I think that's reasonable because it's family emergency that's keeping her away. So I think it's certainly reasonable to allow time for her to take care of that and then sit with us.
Yeah, I'm in favor of making educated, equal opportunity cuts. You know, as as Lori said before, if we're gonna do something, we at least need to be, at least know why we're doing it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So then, if we're not gonna do curriculum, that ends any, of our decisions for tonight. You just,
I have a question regarding a future review. When we're doing buildings and grounds, will we have a representative here, like Matt or somebody from facilities?
That's the guy.
I assume so.
You can,
we nobody in this room could make them. I would love to have them attend and answer some questions as the guy that
you
knows
can tell
facilities.
that and anybody else you wish.
I mean, I know Matt's been here before, so that's why I was asking. And I just wanted to-
Actually, there's been a little bit of reorganization to our facilities group, so I would suggest that Matt and Dave Ross, if you have heard of Dave.
Oh, yeah?
Dave has done a lot of work. He was GMS for years, and now he's GMS/LMS, so he's got both campuses that he's responsible for. So I think we had planned them to be here.
Thank you.
Anyway, sure.
That's interesting that you have him covering two buildings. That means he's traveling back and forth between the two buildings and stuff now?
It's actually the model that most school districts are going to when you have two facility directors, especially in a campus that is as close as those two are. We've actually put a full-time person in to cover during the day, open the building up, and Dave kind of is overseeing both of those individuals to get the buildings opened up, and far more efficiencies going on, and Dave is quite skilled.
I worked with him when I volunteered down in
Yeah, he's really, we
LMS. Those
had
guys
some,
treat me well. Or down in
we had some
GMS.
deficiencies this past summer in LMS that couldn't wait. And he stepped in. We had a resignation there, and he stepped in and did yeoman's work there. So they would be two good representatives to be here to talk to the budget.
Dave has extensive knowledge and experience across all mechanical systems.
Yeah, I worked with him quite a
as
bit.
you know.
Yeah.
So this really was an opportunity when we had a change in the building to take somebody whose pay grade can now reflect that higher level work across more buildings, really cost effective. Otherwise, he was in different things, within the same
It
building.
really has worked out. We really have seen the efficiencies in Dave coordinating both of those. And one contract, if we need a plumber to come in, he'll wait until he needs them at both locations. So it really is kind of the model to develop some efficiencies in the system.
Yeah, I think that is
Yeah.
a good model.
Yeah.
Cindy, what day, I don't have it in front of me, we're reviewing buildings and grounds. Do you have that handy?
buildings and
I
grounds.
left that at home. I'm sorry, if you don't have it handy, don't worry.
December 11th.
Okay,
That's,
thank you.
the 11th is Thursday.
Thursday, it's a week, it's a week from tonight.
Week from tonight. All right, just to recap, tonight, we made reductions, a grand total of $5,125. Screaming right along.
Just a start.
So any member input, new business? Just as I was looking through, as we go through and weekly make any changes, as you know, we're going to make our final decisions on, the school district was January 8th, if I remember correctly. The town was January 6th, school district was January 8th. What I'm proposing to do, if you have us do when we get to January 8th, is do it in the format of EMS 27, which is by function. So it'll be the 1100 series, the 1200 series, the 1300 series. It'll be sort of broader, but at that point, we'll have made all of our recommendations. So that'll just be an opportunity to either approve what we had already done, or if there's, when you looked at that bigger picture, if you feel that there's other places that need further reductions. So just to let you know, I've been toying around with how to approach when we get to January 8th, and I think that's going to be the most efficient, because we have to report it the way that the MS-27 is set up anyways. So that is my recommendation and what I'll be working towards when we get to January 8th. I think it'll make our lives a little easier, too.
Just an FYI, Mr. Markowitz and I have started working on the global 272-580 line. I think the 580 line, Frank, we agreed that we would try and address that the evening that we do special education, because of the $37,000 in increase,
35 of which.
35 is special education for very specific reasons and purposes we'll be able to explain at that point in time.
Alrighty. Anything else under member input, new business? All right, we'll move on then to public input.
Good evening, Jason Gret, 11 Perry Court. Good night, folks. Just a quick, this evening I was sitting in the audience and just had a couple comments from some of the things that were made. I listened to some impassioned conversation about band, how it's such a growing program and whatnot, and while it certainly is, there's a new school right about 6 miles down the road here. It's called the Founders Academy. It's a public school. It's a charter school, but it's a public school. They can't refuse special ed kids. I mean, it's everything about it's exactly the same as what we have in our town here. And I can tell you that band is required. It's not an option. It's not something kids sign up for because they want to do it. Every child there takes band. And every child there brings their own instrument, whether their parents have rented it or bought it. And none of them are stored on site. They all come home. And it's a one, you see all these kids getting on the bus or their parents picking them up and they're carrying all their instruments, no matter how big or small they are. But I find it's funny, and people sometimes make the argument, well, private school is private school. It's not a private school, it's a public school. And how that public school can get away with doing it, and yet we can't. We somehow can't make our parents provide for their own kids on things they want to do. We have to, as taxpayers, somehow provide for every child. And so in this instance, I have to pay twice, once through my taxes for other kids to have instruments and one for my child who is in a public school and has to pay for an instrument. I don't think it's too much to ask parents in the town of Litchfield, one of the most affluent in the state, to provide their kids the instruments that they want. We provide them their bats, their gloves, baseballs, right? When they go play out in town. I see it no differently. And so why there's such a struggle to have people inside traditional school buildings understand there are other ways of doing things. And it's not draconian. It's about education first. Cindy said it tonight, right? Huge increase in our athletics, right? And yeah, we get championships and everything else. It's not because of how much we spend. It's because we've got some great athletes and some great parents who put their kids in positions in other, like as an example, baseball. It's not because they play baseball at Campbell. It's because they play baseball their whole lives outside of Campbell and they got good coming here. So it's not that because the public school system is spending money that we have great athletes and good sports programs. I mean, it doesn't hurt that we provide it at school, but it's not the point, right? Secondly, with regard to the argument that, well, we overspent because we had to take on wrestling. I've heard Mr. Pascucci say it before, it's only fair if you're going to fund one, you shouldn't pick and choose. It's not, that's not fair. You shouldn't have to say, because you choose wrestling, we're not going to pay, or you choose hockey. But if you choose football, we are. That, to me, is the epitome of unfairness. And quite honestly, if it were the guys get to play but the girls don't, that would be illegal. But because it's all a mixed sport or whatnot, we kind of ignore that fact. But the fact still remains. If the school board choose or the administration chose to go spend additional money in that line item, it doesn't mean next year we've got to increase it because they chose to overspend their budget. I can tell you a real-world example. This year in my business, I had to spend almost $20,000 extra on sprinkler work. That line is not going up this year by $20,000. It doesn't matter that I spent that because that just meant I didn't spend it on something else that I thought I'd need and I didn't get to do. That's management right. Just like they have bottom line budget. They have to choose the priority in which they're going to spend their money. But it doesn't mean next year you get more because in the real world there is no more. And finally, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Byron with regard to averaging out budgets. Because maybe in government, you don't do that. But the real-world example is this. Over a rolling 6-year average is how I deal with my snow removal budget. And what they do is, we look at 6 years' worth of expenditures, we take out the high, we take out the low, and we average the rest. And I can tell you, I'm probably $100,000 short this year, based upon what we're expecting for snow and what I've seen over the last couple of years. The problem is we don't know, right? It could be super warm out, and I have an excess in money. I could. But I could get a whole ton of snow and be in the hole so deep, I can't even come out from under it. So, unfortunately, it's how businesses do. And I expect no different than professional people managing budgets in their buildings. And what happens is then they have to make the tough choices. And that, unfortunately, is not necessarily what they want to do. They don't ever want to be the ones making tough choices. They throw that on the politicians to have to make bad choices, right? Well, it's not us. We're going to tell you everything we want rather than have to make tough decisions. They'll never have to make that tough decision. So you all can buy into that and create another budget that's $2 million higher. And I sit at home and kind of chuckle and go, why even sit here and do that? Let them take whatever they want. Let them don't approve a budget. Let it be whatever they want it to be, because we all know what's going to happen. People are going to say no. It's not any better out there. A lot will argue that it's getting worse. You know? So and I don't suspect that any of you don't take what you do here very seriously. Otherwise, why be here, right? You take it very seriously, like I do. Your job is to give something the voters can pass. You know they're not passing something that's high. You know it. We just keep doing it. Yet, collectively, you guys can't see that for some reason. I will stake my life on the fact that you're going to present a budget that's well higher than the default budget. And again, I'll believe that default's going to pass again, unfortunately. And that means nothing new, right? Nothing new. These folks want some new things that can never get done. Why? Because it's your budget, because you all can't figure out where to cut the budget to make sure they do get some of the new. Right? All they can do then is slide back to default and continue what we do. We can't move forward. You guys have to be the agents to move forward. If you don't, who do we blame but ourselves? Move us forward. Ask them what's important, where those items are that must move forward. We need a new math program. We need whatever this is, whatever the new, the thing that is needed to move us forward. Those are the priorities. The rest, they've got to be paired out. Otherwise, what do we get? But default, which is what? Continuation of the same. So that's my pitch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
Actually, I just want to clarify that band students at CHS and LMS do pay for their own instruments. At public school, we do pay for their own instruments with very few exceptions. The concern that was shown to us when we did our tour was the security during the school day of making sure those expensive instruments that the children's parents buy are secure. However, that was cut out of the budget, so it's not even under discussion because it was cut out of the budget. So I just wanted to clarify those points there. And did you have
Actually,
a comment?
that was my exact point. The instruments aren't supplied by the school. There are possibly a few in the school that have been supplied. There are a few that were in the budget, but those are specialty items that a child would not normally buy, and it's something that's requested by the music teacher. So it's just an additive. It's to give a different sound, to give different percussions. One of them is a saxophone that is much more costly than a normal saxophone, and that's why it's not something the child would go buy.
No, I understand that. It's not every single one of them. What I'm saying is, after a conversation with Mr. Lecklider, when he was here presenting, exactly that. There was a wide breadth of instruments that they wanted to purchase because no one wanted, parents didn't want to go spend on a glockenspiel maybe, or whatever it was that was going to sit in the closet after a while. But again, I understand that and I feel that, but quite honestly, it's not the taxpayer's problem to go buy a glockenspiel, in my opinion. It's my opinion, you know what I'm saying? So the one-offs, how many of these are there? And they're not cheap, obviously.
Right.
We all know that.
There aren't that many one-offs. I mean, I believe the triangles was another one. It's not a
Yeah.
normal item.
Hey, we can buy triangles, you know, but it's the $1,000 ones that I'm worried about. And the security thing, I understand. Believe me, I understand, but they can take them home, you know.
They do. That was my
Just
point.
for
It's
the
during
day.
the school day.
Right.
We
Very-
toured it, and the shelves are
Yep.
They're,
due for a facelift.
Yep.
and they're not in the budget, so
the
it's
area,
kind of
yeah.
argument
Move-
for
yeah.
no argument's sake.
Next.
All right. That concludes our meeting for tonight. So if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So made.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And our next meeting will be next Tuesday night, December 9th at 7 o'clock. So we'll see you then.